different background here. Most of the time you see me out on a job site. But today, this is just a little introduction to what is going to be a long video. And today's subject is swimming pools. So the mission here, I've sort of ranted about this for a number of years, but in particular, it's what I describe as horrific construction habits of swimming pools. Particularly, in the whole horrible habits. They're quite normal amongst the industry, but I'm just saying, I see them as being horrific, and that on the perspective of foreigners, who basically are all of my clients, and it certainly applies to Ticos too, who have even less of a bearing as knowing what's good and what is not good. But anyway, so we're going to take this particular buying a pool from literally the first day right until completion of the pool and in operation. So this video will likely end up being an hour and a half long when it's all completed, and I'm just going to keep adding different chapters to it as we progress along so that the viewer can see the entire process as it is. Some may be looking at wanting to do a pool and have an idea how it should actually be done. Others may have serious pool problems, in which case, for the most part, looking at this video would amount to running around the maternity ward looking for a condom machine. Because most of what I'm going to cover here is not really fixable. Unless you have a little tool called Caterpillar and you smash it and start all over again. So the point of this video is hopefully for a few people, irrelevant with whether I deal with them or not, that they have an idea of, shall we call this a video as a how to or how not to build a pool that has at least a 50-year life expectancy, not a matter of a few years. I will go into some more of it in my rant as basically on-site and whatnot, but anyways, just in general, this is to emphasize to what I would call innocent victims rather than innocent consumers about what to look for and why not to accept what I call pure BS by the industry saying, oh, it's perfectly okay to do this, that, everything that goes, especially anybody's fault anyways. No, I don't like block. But on a pool or a water tank, block is insane. There's no other way to put it, and it's what's even, how else can you describe something where you're paying more money to get substantially less? The only thing you're getting more of is risk. So rather than ending up being an ignorant, innocent victim in the whole scenario, is to be forewarned that block structures in a seismically active country cannot and will not play out favorably. Plain and simple. It can't happen. It won't happen. Because swimming pools are incredibly heavy structures. And when that ground gets shook, oh, there will be hell to pay. But that's my warning to anybody who's considering this. You know, very simply, why accept a risk when there's no reward? You're paying more money to build a ticking time bomb, waiting for Mother Nature and Mother Earth to seriously rock your world. Anyways, with that, you'll excuse me through this video, I do a few more rants, but I mean, I just find this scenario so preposterously ridiculous and so incredibly common. The number of monolithically poured pools in this country is abysmally small, and yet economically nonsense that you cannot make a pool or water tank cheaper using blocks than using a monolithic pour and renting concrete forms to do it the right way. Okay, well, with that, that's what this video is going to continue on. So, this is for those who have want the full story. Well, this is going to take a number of months for this video to come to full maturity and have the whole story from birth to completion of this pool in Baena in the Breezes project. Anyways, with that, I'll sign off and we'll continue on with the first segments of this story.
Okay, here for a beautiful January morning down in the base of our pool. So now we've set all our lines and we put in a whole bunch of gravel and compacted this like crazy here so that we've got a good solid base. Monday morning our truck comes in to bore all of our piling holes, which is definitely very much a rarity in Costa Rica. Now this is the edge, this line here, see there is the edge of the pool. Now in front of this, needless to say, with this view, this is going to be an infinity pool. So this line here, see that, is actually the very front of the main pool. So actually our floor that's going to be supporting the infinity reserve is actually going to be cantilevered out, because the whole mission here from the word get-go was to push this pool right out over the jungle so that you get that really up close feeling. So we've taken that to the extreme. So this floor is actually going to be cantilevered out to hold up the much smaller infinity reserve, but that will be, as I said, cantilevered out. I mean, we're talking about a 20 centimeter, 8-inch thick floor with double rebar mat of half-inch rebar. Needless to say, it will cantilever out because, as you can see, we've got no place left to pour the floor, so not much choice there. Anyway, so as I said, I was just going to do these in short snippets and put it all together so you can see this pool coming to life. Now this was always, with the challenges with water permissions, I've been working at this job for 18 months now. We were just in the middle of the engineering phase to figure out how to put this pool up here safely. when I heard that the door had slammed at the municipality and no more permits were being issued with the state of the water concessions and all the private projects in this municipality. So we've had lots of time to think about this, but that was the desired effect. And as I described to the owner, the wow effect. So you want that wow of having a substantial pool perched out here over the ocean, but there's also another wow effect. When we have a severe earthquake, which is kind of an inevitability, and the obstacore, which is the government agency in charge of seismic, geothermal, volcanoes, their office opinion is this zone of the country is due for its serious earthquake, meaning a +7 earthquake. In that situation, sitting on this mound of dirt and parking 100 tons on the edge of this hillside is not what I would describe as comforting to say to anybody, oh, sure, it'll stay there. I want to be certain. So as I said to Conrad, well, the wow effect we don't is showing up here the day after a severe earthquake and saying, wow, my infinity pool is now down there. Now, I know there's lots of pools on this here part of the coast with our significant mountains that could be very questionable. And more so because they build them on a block, which I find a preposterously ridiculous option. That, sticking a bunch of pieces together is not the same as a monolithic pour of high-grade concrete. So from a security of the structure, not the same thing. From a standpoint of leaking, not even close to the same thing. And we'll be covering a number of things that we'll be doing from start to finish to make sure that this pool will never leak. So starting Monday, we're going to punch in 35 piling holes here, 35 centimeters diameter or 14 inches, running them down 5 meters or 16 feet. So that this, like a cat, this claws of this pool are going to dig into this pile of dirt and make sure that this 100 tons, and those are metric tons, so that's about 220 English tons, that it stays here. I mean, not forgetting, water is bloody heavy. And how much can a pool shake around? Well, I happen to know a lady up in Guanacaste at Coco who manages properties up there, originally from Calgary, and she's been down here about as long as I have. Anyways, she told me in the 2012 Guanacaste earthquake, none of the swimming pools she managed had any water left in them. How did that happen? Well, the ground shook so viciously, it literally shook the water out of the swimming pools. So in that, and of course they said that was never going to happen in Guanacaste. Well, never turned out to be 2012. I believe it was 7.2 or 7.4. So that gives you an idea just how vicious it can be. So that's what I'm counting on, that this pool will withstand that kind of a test. Now, I'm going to give a little bit to set the preface here for those who follow this journey along here. I want to preface this, and I'm going to pick on somebody in particular, name them, because this is insane, and I don't think any owner faced with this option is going to make what I call dumb decisions, risky decisions like that. Because what we're talking about here is what I call an insurance policy. Yeah, it's going to cost some money. This piling system is about $10,000 gone like that. Well, relatively speaking. But is it a reasonable amount to make sure that this major investment stays where it's put? And considering it's all going to be surrounded by house, so if anything goes wrong with this pool, what do? Knock the house down to get at the pool, or come in by helicopter? I mean, that's just too ugly to even think about. But anyways, I was doing a pool just a few kilometers south over that other side of that mountain range over there. Anyways, we had just dug the hole. We were working on the floor just like at this stage, and I noticed the neighbor only 2 blocks down the hill had punched a hole in the ground. Well, I went to talk to that neighbor because we rent these forms by the month, the forms that form up this concrete. So I had this brilliant idea. Well, hey, we can do 2 pools within 1 month, so each client would pay half of the rental bill, which is about $1,400 in this particular case. And their pool was slightly smaller than the one I was building, so all we had to do was slide them, use them, slide them down the hill, and set them up again. So I went to talk to this couple about this possibility, but I ran into a bit of a language problem. They didn't speak English. They didn't speak even bad Spanish. They spoke French. So I'm hooped. So they were to talk to their agent at Century 21, Baena Homes, about this concept. We never had the conversation, but I've heard through the grapevine, the back door, from an agent there who isn't an idiot, because this is a company that's gone into the construction and remodeling business without having anybody on staff who actually has the slightest clue about what the hell they're doing. So you got the blind leading the blind. Not a pleasant result. Any rate, their comment to the client was, "Oh, you don't need to do that. We've been building pools out of blocks for 8 years. Oh, get that. 8 years. I'm so impressed. 8 years is what percentage of the life of the planet. And there's no problems. Except that's a lie, because I know there's a pool right across the street from where this one was being built that leaks like a freaking sieve. Now, the part of the insanity to this, and why I'm doing this little lecture, is this. A block pool costs more to build than a monolithic concrete pour. Not less. So I ask anybody, would you pay more for a wheelbarrow than you would for a dump truck? So why would you accept a second-grade, third-rate, shitty pool and pay more money? That doesn't add up. Now, in this pool's case, no, and I'm not sure whether it's just customary habit, like smoking is a customary habit, goofy as shit, that they do this, or they're too cheap to pay the rent on the forms. Well, okay, here's the numbers on that pool. $1,400 of rent for the forms versus, you could go buy about $800 worth of wood, or formuletta as they call it here, and then when you've done the project, you can take all this twisted and beaten wood, and you can have a big bonfire and roast weenies with it. Okay, so you say, oh, but I saved $600. Well, not exactly. You spent $800 more in labor assembling the shit, only to get a bunch of pieces stuck together. Now that's amazing when you think that these hills are full of swimming pools. They're hidden away. You don't see them, but I assure you they are there. On that same pool, we rented those forms from Maluma down in Parita, and they missed some pieces, and Victor told me, he says, I got to bring you some pieces. We didn't send it in the shipment. And so I'm trying to explain to him where we were near Ohichel. And he's not getting it. And I says, Victor, you don't know this area? And he made this prophetic comment. Now, this is the only company that had forms 6 foot height, which is what you need for swimming pools. They're the only ones that have forms anywhere out here. So the only company that's in the game, and he made this comment, we have never placed a single piece of equipment in Ohichel. And yet those hills are filled with swimming pools. Built by idiots. No, I'm not being soft and kind, but I'm calling it what it is. Come on. This is ridiculous. You're paying more money to get shit. And that's what it is. As I said, when it gets shook, more than a little risky, and they're notorious for leaking. We're doing everything in this pool to make sure it doesn't leak. And also, it's not just you don't want to be losing the water, but now we're putting the super duper floor in here to support and tie all of these fingers sticking down in the ground. These 35 pilings are coming up and hooked together and held in position in that floor. If that pool is leaking, that means water is going down and penetrating and oxidizing the rebar in that concrete. That's not a little problem. That's a monster problem. So the point is, this pool has to stay dry in perpetuity for that structure to maintain its integrity. So that's the other big reason. Because, you know, if those pilings turn into mush in 20, 25 years, oh, how do you fix that one? Because this is all about infrastructure and how important it is to build solid infrastructure that will last for decades, not having a foresight longer than 5 years. Now, tropical people typically, not picking on them, but they typically don't have long-term plans. You know, those of us who come from winter countries, no, this is something that's sort of ingrained in you. You have to plan for winter. You have to plan for what's your maintenance bill going to be over the 20 years. I don't know how long Conrad's going to own this property, but I know that, you know, if he keeps it for 20 years and sells it on to somebody else, they're not buying a ticking time bomb. And all this evidence that we provide in building this substantiates what was done, why it was done, how it was done, and the economics that go with that. So anyways, I'm almost up to 15 minutes of my kind of lecture, but anyways, as we go on, there you have where we're at and the whys and the how fors. So till next episode. Okay, busy today. Putting our cat's claws into this mountainside with a boring truck. Well, this truck normally is digging holes for high line power, but today piling is the mission. So we have one dug, and quite handy here is the fact that we have next to no rocks whatsoever, so it makes it a whole lot. So some of these mountain areas up here have rocks on top of the rocks, beside rocks, and under rocks, and over rocks. So this is actually pretty easy boring. So you can see it sinks in there pretty good, and a little bit faster than our little auger. A little more torque on this puppy. Anyways, so we've got 35 of these to do to anchor this pool down. Basically, more or less 4 rows of 9 columns each. So each of these has a capacity of 3 tons, and the pool is basically 100 tons. And for those of us who know, those are metric tons, not little English tons. That pool is 220 English tons, or 100 metric tons. So, needless to say, this will give it adequate support, but the whole reason for this is it's basically seismically driven, is to make sure that this ground starts dancing viciously, that this pool will get no idea of sliding down this steep mountainside of dirt. This was particularly noticeable when we had an earthquake in, I believe it was 2010. So 10 years ago we had an earthquake. It was called the Cinchona earthquake. And it was an unusual one. The epicenter was in the country underneath Volcan Polis. And it also had the highest death toll of any earthquake in Costa Rica, but that's because it was in country and underneath dirt hills like this. So the reason there was a lot of loss of life was if the hillside collapsed and somebody had a house parked up on that hillside, bye-bye house, no matter what it was made of. Having respect to this is the most seismically active area of the country. In frequency, it's never had any severe ones. But I should say up to now, but never is a long time. So anyway, that's the whole idea here, is making sure that whatever the physical conditions are, we've done everything that's humanly possible to make sure this is anchored here. It stays put where we left it. Anyways, I think that's enough for anybody to get an idea of what boring pilings is all about. So without being boring on the boring, I shall sign off. Well, just following up here as our very holy pool moves forward in the last, here we got 4 holes, 5 piling holes to do yet, so don't think we're going to finish today, but anyways, this is drill has pretty serious torque to it to drill those huge holes. Anyways, I said this puppy is not going anywhere. Up here in particular, the truck just finished today. This week we bored our 35 piling holes, so those are all complete. And for anybody who hasn't, well, a nice big hole in the ground, 14 inch, 35 centimeter, because of this steep hillside we're sitting on. So that's ready for our return next week to different. We had to cut a ramp in here so that we could get the auger truck down there to do that work. So anyways, moving on. Oh, this is the mats that are already, half the pool floor mat is already tied, ready to go down there next week to make our rather beefy floor. And here's all the cages for our pilings and our dirt that will be our fill in. This is our aggregate for our concrete that we will be making, possibly by this time next week. And more dirt. All of this, a lot of this is going to end up over there filling in our retaining walls. So that pretty much covers off this week's fun and games. So I'll sign off with our afternoon ocean view. Rather warm out here. Okay, we got a smoking hot February afternoon here. She's been rather warm here these last days. Anyway, so for this last, what we've been moving ahead with is getting all of the heavy steel work involved. This is a double, it's known as a double mat, 2 layers of steel. And all of the steel from the pilings come up and are tied to the mats of the floor, and these are offset, so basically there's no place that has more than a 10 by 10 centimeter or 4 by 4 space without rebar. The PVC lines are in, those are, you see, that's our 2 pickups that will be in the infinity reserve. That one there will be a drain, and these 2 in the infinity reserve are separated so that there's 2 pickups, so that if anything happens to one, the other will still be functioning to feed to the pump. Now, things to note. Okay, you notice underneath all of this is black plastic. Now, this being a pool is not for after the fact. What this is when we pour the concrete, that dry dirt doesn't suck the water out of our concrete, which basically lessens the quality of the concrete when it does that. So hence why that was put down first. Now, this is the first pool where I'm doing all of the jets using PEX. This is PEX pipe running inside a protector tube, just cheap poly duct tube, so that they're removable, and there will be 8 floor, these are for the floor jets, so there'll be 8 floor jets in this pool. So to say the least, it will be well aerated, plus that's the idea, is to have this working on an ozone system. You can just see that one there. A little too difficult to get to right now. Well, actually, I just walk around the end here. This will be part. So because all of what we call the white goods that goes with the pool are all set up for 2-inch, what this is a conversion from PEX to PV and reduced down to 2-inch, with the floor jets go into that. So the idea here is, and the proverbial problem with all systems, is they don't circulate particularly well. Going back to the old barn routine, is that whatever jet is at the end of a string gets the least water. The idea between a PEX system and a PEX manifold is to have uniform flow to all jets, so there's nobody being left at the hind tit, as the old saying goes, and not getting adequate supply. So that is the point there. Plus the fact is that PEX is good for 175 psi, so the likelihood of it ever blowing up is extremely slim. And then we further protected it by putting the tube inside another tube, so that, well, first of all, they're removable if something should ever go really screwy. Anyway, so we have basically all of the formwork for the perimeter of the pool is done using forms in a less conventional method, but here, because we push this out, the whole thing from the word go was to push this pool out as far as we could possibly go. So we've done that, and actually the front part of the infinity is actually cantilevered off of the floor. You see the row of pilings is here, this is sticking out in front of that.